Hello to everyone watching this. My name is Whitehawk, and we are currently in Whitehawk Medicine Lodge, which is my home. And I'm a healer, and lots of healing takes place in this home of mine. And I've been doing healing for many years, and I've also been making flower essences for a very long time. And I've always had a big interest in plants and flowers, since childhood in fact. And I went last year to the Plant Consciousness Conference as part of, with my essences and with the British Flower and Vibrational Essence Association. And I met this lovely lady here, and she has these interesting devices, and you can probably hear in the background this sort of tinkling music going on. Well, we're actually hearing the feedback of the plants. The plants are singing to us currently. So Trigrilla's been doing some research for the last few years with this biofeedback machinery, and I wanted to ask her some questions about it today. So Trigrilla, how did you get involved with this work?
I started with this about 4 years ago. I have a degree in music engineering and electrical engineering, so the idea of sound has always been something that's really interested me. And then I've been a healer also for many years, working specifically with Kabbalah and sacred geometry. And I moved to a community in northern Italy called Damanhur. And in this community, which is a community of about 500-600 people, and one of the first things I learned about when I first got there was this research around the intelligence of plants and how plants perceive the world. Specifically through a series of experimentations, of research, and of study, they came up with something called the music of the plants. So you can imagine arriving into a wooded area and all of a sudden hearing this sort of music, and you just say, where is that coming from? Like, why is there music in the forest? And it's actually the plants themselves that are making this music. And you know, with my love of audio and my love of like plants in general, and it just kind of all worked together to open this world of, wow, we can now start to bring in another sense into the way that we connect and communicate with plants, and we can actually start to understand how plants are communicating. See, turn the camera with us. There we go. There she goes.
Ah, so now we have the aloe vera joining in. It sounds more like a piano.
Yes.
It's decided to join in, and at this point I thought I'd try and experiment. We don't know if it's going to work at all, but I have with me here one of my flower essences. And this one is a white lobelia essence, and I call it Feel the Love. And it's about feeling loved and being loved, and recognising who you love and who loves you. And being a sort of a very loving essence, I wondered if I was to put some on my hands and sort of approach the plants, whether they would respond to it or not, as the case may be. So I'm going to try this. And basically,
you've already gotten a response if you think about it.
So I've just opened it. It's making a lot more noise now. Okay, let's see what happens as I approach it. So the aloe vera's decided to join in now. It wasn't singing at all previously, and now it's decided to join in. So that's the deeper notes coming through here. Sort of long notes coming through. If you can hear that.
There's a certain combination of notes that the aloe vera is making that show me that. Based on my experience and the fact that I play with many plants, from extremely experienced plants to very kind of new plants. And just like a musician himself, so a musician, when they first come in and starts to play, you get this like weird scale-ish type of things. You get certain types of patterns that people do when they first start to play a musical instrument. And it's the exact same thing with certain plants. So here you're starting to hear that. You're hearing a plant that's sort of learning and sounds camera shy, as we experienced, because we've turned the camera on several times and it's taken it a while. When you came with the essence though, which is not the first time, this is the second time that we've tried with an essence, that she's reacted quite quickly to that type of thing. So there again, we're starting to see these different personalities and reactions from different plants. Where instead, you know, when we had this secondary plant, we you know, came in later, but who we felt really wanted to play. And yet as soon as we connected everything up, took a little bit, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, I get it. Yeah, I can do this.
Ah, yes.
And so it was a very, very different experience.
What we were discussing before is a lot of people who come to, say, the RHS exhibition treat their plants as if they're some kind of ornament. So they buy them for the structure, the colour, the decorative feature, which is what, you know, gardeners choose them for that reason, and they touch the leaves or the form and they say it's beautiful the way it tumbles or whatever. So they're kind of worshipping it in a sense for the way they look, which is quite understandable. So how do people react when suddenly you produce the sound from these plants? What do they say to you? What do they ask you?
The very first thing they all say is, I talk to my plants, I play music for my plants. And we're like, that's not what you're listening to. You're actually listening to the plants making the music. And usually it's disbelief. The first thing is disbelief. The first thing is, what do you mean, the plants? And then you explain how it works and how it goes. And then they stop and they listen. And you can almost see, you know, the gears starting to shift. They're like, wait a minute. Okay, wait, my plants are alive, that I know, because it's biology. Makes sense, plants are alive. But now it's a step beyond that. Now it's about, okay, wait a minute, I have my cat, which I pet, which has a personality, which has a consciousness, which makes a choice. Are you trying to say that in some ways, I'm trying to say that the plants are even more than that. Because if you think about it, they're the oldest beings that exist on this planet.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're highly, highly adaptable, which means they've had to learn how to make changes for years. For millennia, they've made, modified, changed their chemical structure, created poisons for their enemies. And so all of a sudden these gears start to click in people, and they start to kind of look and appreciate plants differently.
So it's almost like the plants have just got quiet. They're listening to us.
Absolutely.
And other times they're quite, you know, vibrant. So I'm very tempted to sort of go up and interact with one of these plants and see if there's any change or not.
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe if I kind of stroke one of the plants, it will sing more. Maybe it will be quiet. So, shall we just see what happens?
Sure.
I'd also like to, maybe before I do that, I'd also like to ask you a little bit about this equipment you have. Would you like to be able to explain it a little bit for us and how it is working? I mean, we can see here, if I walk behind the chair, we can see here we got a little connector on the leaf. And we've got a probe. Is that a probe in the soil?
Yep.
So would you like to just you know, explain what it's doing here?
The device in some ways is really simple. It's a simple biofeedback device. So the similar as what we do is human biofeedback. The idea is that we are made of electrical signals just the same as plants are made of electrical signals. So we have one electrode that's connected to the leaf, that then is, and another one that's connected, as you said, to the soil, and it measures the resistance between these two connectors. And that part of it is, it's simple, it's scientific, it's normal. The thing that's interesting is that if I take two connectors and I put them in while I'm listening to a biofeedback device of myself, no matter how hard I think, I can't change the measurements. Similar to, we think of as a lie detector test. On the other hand, the plants, after a while, they start to recognize that they're the ones that are making the music.
All right.
And
so
this
they
is
don't
where
know in the beginning.
Well, in the beginning, they've never done this before, right?
Okay.
So you connect them up and you start to hear certain traits. The more that you experience plants, you start to really listen to certain ways that they use notes. Similarly, and again, it depends on countries. Like, for example, when I'm home in Italy, there's one kind of sound that I hear. When I go to Australia or when I come here, there's other kinds of sounds that I make. So it's, but then after a while, they start to recognize what it is that they do, and then they start to really modify that consciously, and you literally hear it as a switch. So this is why we say that there's a training
discovering
period.
their voices.
Absolutely.
I'm Dan. How are you tonight? You alright? I Been enjoying your lovely music. I hope you don't mind. Oh gosh. Sorry, I didn't hope that wasn't too distressing for you. Oh,
Just
okay.
thinking about that.
Yeah. So how's your day been then? Oh really?
This is his best chat up line.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I had a day like that the other day actually. Nothing goes right, does
So
it?
there's a thought that comes to mind. Many years ago, my eldest son, when he was a baby, I remember he was in his early stages, the first few weeks, and I think he may have been without his baby grow or something on, and suddenly it was like he discovered his feet, and he saw his feet and his toes move, and he was kind of like, oh, they're moving, and he was moving the feet, and he was kind of responding to the fact that he suddenly discovered his feet, and there was something on the end of his legs that was making a movement.
And that's how he was
And
moving.
he was reacting to this,
Yes.
and the feet were reacting to the fact that he was reacting, and it was kind of wonderful to see. Suddenly he was discovering that, oh, these are joined to me.
Yes.
You know, what are these? And so it's kind of, it makes me think about the plants in that respect, like suddenly they're discovering, oh, this is me.
Absolutely. It's very, and it's
It's
very similar
like
to
showing
that.
them a mirror. They've never sort of seen what they look like before. They've never heard what they sound like.
And not only that, they can actually start to play along with others. So they play along with each other, but not just plant musicians, they can also play along with human musicians. So this is where it gets really creative also, because now there's a new form of interaction. Because to date, our interaction with plants have either been one way for people who really believe that they're ornamental. I talk to my plants because I feel like they grow better because of all these types of things. Then there are those people who are lucky enough to have a more kind of subtle connection with the plants, and they feel like they can hear the plants. But then when you listen to the plant for real, and when you talk or when you play an instrument or sing a song with the plant, and the plant mimics your notes or harmonizes your notes, now you've entered into communication.
Bing bing bong bing bong. Bong bing bong bing bong.
This is like
Bing bong. Bing bong. Bing bong. Bing bong. Bing bong. I think I know the tune. Bing bong. Bing bong. Bing bong. Bong bing. Bing. Bing bong bong bong. Bong bong bong. Bong bong.
It's very creative.
reminds me of
And that's really where the light bulbs go off. And so when we do things like at the RHS shows, like where we did Chelsea Flower Show, and you have people that either because they send energy to the plant, or when they touch the plant, or when they talk to the plant, get a reaction from the plant that is quite obviously different than what the plant was playing before. Again, it's a new world that's starting to open. Because now all of a sudden you're looking around your house and you're realizing that in the morning when I wake up, I say good morning to my loved ones, to my family. I say good morning to my cats or my dogs, but I forget to say good morning to my plants. Now all of a sudden you say good morning to your plants because you realize that they really are listening
they're part
to you.
of you.
They're part of
the family.
Exactly.
And I use it for healing purposes.
Yeah, they did perk up the last time when
Last
you
time
were
I got this
rattling
out,
them.
they didn't really respond to the flute. They were quite quiet. And then I got the rattle out and they started singing away like crazy, which I thought was really interesting because I thought it would have been the other way round.
This time they stopped playing when you started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, they
really,
stopped when I
they
played the
stopped when you
flute.
played the flute. They were
And they
very
were like,
attentive.
oh,
maybe-
Yeah,
Yeah, they were listening.
yeah, they were. Seriously, they
From a musical point of view, how wide is the range? I mean, some of them, do they sing very low? Some of them are very high.
Yeah, we've discovered, so the device locks them to 4 octaves that they can play with. And I've noticed, for example, when we did Chelsea Flower Show, we only had 4 plants. And so we had these 4 plants that were connected. And we found that, you know, one was the melody maker, so the one that carried the tune for everything. So a bromeliad that just carried everything. We had an Aeonian that was the bass. So it carried kind of like this bass sound, and it followed through, and it was the accompaniment. No matter what, even when we isolated it and we would put it, when you would isolate it, it would a little bit play more, but as soon as you turned all the other plants on, it was really an accompaniment. And then we had a fern that wouldn't play unless everybody was playing. So she really did not like the idea of playing by herself.
On her own, she was a bit shy.
She was, you know, I don't know if it's so much as she's shy or if we take the characteristics of a fern. Ferns aren't they're social.
They like growing in clumps.
They
and
grow in
groups.
clumps, they grow in
Yes.
forests, they grow with a large variety of other plants. They're not necessarily plants that you just put by yourself. And so therefore when we would isolate them, or isolate these, we had 2, and when, you know, we had 1 connected at a time, whenever they would isolate them, they wouldn't play. And then we had this little pineapple plant that was kind of like the diva. You know, it was, you know, this little pineapple plant that it was whatever it wanted. It could decide to not play for hours, then it could start playing, and it would take the stage, and then it would stop. And so over the course of the entire week, those plants had been playing together for 2 weeks before Chelsea, and then throughout the Chelsea week playing pretty much 10 to 12 hours a day. We got to hear all their personalities kind of shine through. It was really quite... On the other hand, when we went to Plant Consciousness, when I got there, there was the main area where the speakers were presenting, and then there was these breakout rooms. And I asked one of the other tables if I could use their plants. And I was given 2 quite lovely plants, a peace lily and I think it was a begonia. Another begonia. It was a very, very beautiful begonia. These 2 plants right away started playing.
Oh, they were chatterboxes.
Exactly. And I couldn't figure it out. I was like, why? How are these plants playing really so well? Like, you know, elaborate music, not just random stuff. It turned out that the owners of the plants are a musical group, and the plants live in their music room. So this is the room where they rehearse in the pew. The plants have been exposed to this music. As a matter of fact, there was one of those, the peace lily had an interaction with a woman when during the conference there was a woman who was selling books. You know, one of these like genuinely sweet people. Like I'm not like that. I'm way too much of a pain for that. But she was just like this genuinely sweet person. And she walked into the room and she looked at this peace lily, and from across the room she was like, "Hello, peace lily. Aren't you?" She was just like all of a sudden this connection with this peace lily. whoa, the peace lily stopped playing for a second. And all of a sudden you would hear this comment response of the plant, like dropped into its low register and started responding to this woman. So the woman was like, are you having a beautiful day, peace lily? And the peace lily would not play while she was speaking. And then she would finish her question and the peace lily would respond with a series of notes that were outside of the register of what it had been playing as regular music. It was so intense that I literally started to cry. I mean, I hear plants all the time and I research plants and I spend a lot of time with them and I'm always impressed. But this was beyond that. This was one of those like,
Wow.
oh my God. You know, there was nobody else in the room. I was like, why? Why? Where are my witnesses? Why am I the only one to bear witness to this?
We try having a chat with those plants.
Absolutely.
So, if for instance you were sort of listening to a plant on a daily basis and you were kind of watering it regularly, I mean, if I was to water that plant now, do you think that the sound would start, sound quite different as I watered it?
Absolutely. It would. We actually see that a lot. We see between watering the plants, there's a very quick reaction often. Sometimes talking to the plant, sometimes touching it, really depends on the plant. Water tends to be one for many reasons. One, because it makes a better connection, and but also just because it's such a fundamental piece of a plant life. The same as light, we see sometimes making also a big change because it is such a fundamental part of the way that they operate. They operate. It's their sustenance.
Yeah.
It's what they can convert into other things. And so we definitely, those two elements in particular, we see big changes.
So at night, if you were to turn off the lights and go to bed, but would they still sing at night? Do they still sing, or are they quieter at night?
They're quieter at night, depending on the times. For example, I used to do, I have a tree that I've been working with over the last few years that I dream with and I work with, and so I connect a device to him, particularly at night. And he has a very specific pattern as to when he goes to sleep. And so he might go to sleep somewhere around 1 a.m. and he wakes up at about 7 a.m. and between 1 and 7, this particular plant slows down to almost nothing of music. So this has been kind of an indicator
almost like
for me.
snoring.
Almost, yeah, pretty much. And it's been this indicator to me, so I try to go to sleep around the same time when I'm working with him in order for us to dream together.
And we'll continue a little bit later. Thank you very much.